What makes a good story today? I want to produce a few videos on what I believe are useful concepts and principles when telling stories, in particular prose fiction. I'm no expert by any means, so this isn't gospel, but I thought I'd start before I get into any specifics with sketching out the broad strokes of conceptualizing good storytelling in the contemporary era. I call it unity theory, but I'm sure similar ideas have been cooked up by people smarter than me with much better names. A good story is like a triangle, where all elements of the text gesture towards and support a singular point. Your point is best thought of as being whatever emotion you want to evoke in the audience: terror for horror, the warm and fuzzies for romance, and so forth. It can also be a moral or political message, but it's much easier to think of it as the emotion you want to create in the audience. A bad story is one that does this, where something sticks out where it isn't supposed to be. This can be as simple as a bad accent in a film.
And why should the people listen to you?
Because, unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
Or something more complex or nuanced, a lack of subtlety, a plot thread left hanging, or a moment that stands out as strange. So, what does unity theory mean for you if you're an aspiring storyteller, writer, filmmaker, narrative designer, so on? It means, particularly at the right times in the writing process, that you should make the creation of the story a more conscious act. You should, at the right times, have an idea of what your point is and be making deliberate decisions in and about your writing on how to support it. Unity theory is an antidote to the problems caused by the idea, so often spread among junior writers, that writing is a spontaneous art. But the fact is, a published text, especially books, are a completed product that has been labored over extensively. It's had multiple drafts, multiple edits, sometimes multiple beta readers, sometimes multiple editors. If you're able to acknowledge that a good completed work is one about which many deliberate decisions have been made, then you can start making deliberate decisions at the appropriate time in your own process about your own writing, and a whole bunch of things become easy to accept. For one, that your first draft of your piece is the text at an embryonic stage, that it's supposed to be messy. A construction site or a blueprint is not an apartment building. It would be silly for an architect to become frustrated that he can't cook a meal in the blueprint kitchen. And so it would be silly for you to A, get frustrated that your story isn't good when it's early in development, or B, assume it's good to go when it's that early on. You'll be in for a rude surprise when no one wants to live in your blueprint. The former is a kind of writer's block caused by having expert taste, a taste honed on published work, but beginner skill regarding the writing process. And the latter is a kind of writer's block caused by the belief that just because it felt good to write, felt spontaneous, it must make for a good story. So now you know that, conceptually, a good story is one about which deliberate decisions have been made and executed well, though execution is its own topic. Now take that idea and shove it into the back of your head and go back to writing spontaneously. Why would I tell you to do this? The reason is, I've seen junior writers become fixated on telling a good story, so fixated that it becomes a paralytic. They try to line edit as they write. This is the third kind of writer's block. If the first is the foolish architect and the second is the proud architect, the third is the anxious architect who keeps ripping things down. If you're just starting to get used to the idea of unity theory, what you should be doing is writing broadly but editing ruthlessly. Your first few drafts are not going to be and are not supposed to be triangles. They're supposed to be more like rectangles. And when you edit, cut things out, rewrite, and so on, you're focusing your work more and more on that point. This is what kill your darlings means. Maybe that scene or character or turn of phrase lives in the corners of the triangle that need to be filed off the final product. As you get used to editing deliberately, then you will, I believe, start producing better, more focused first drafts naturally, but that comes with practice. So why do deliberate decisions even matter? Well, a text made up of deliberate, well executed. No, I will not elaborate on what I mean by execution. This is a vibes-based theory. Decisions is more likely to be unified and not have anything sticking out. Yeah, but why do deliberate decisions matter? I can't go over every possible deliberate decision. Put it this way, a text that is trying to imitate the style of the Odyssey is going to require different decisions than a text trying to imitate Memento. Different forms, different genre conventions, different emotional outcomes require different decisions. But let's go ahead and give a minute but foundational example. Again, this is not something I want you fixating on in early drafts, but it's a very useful example. That is the fundamental question of word choice. There is a common meme, at least it was common in my time: the curtains are blue. The teacher says it represents depression, but the author just meant that the curtains were blue. So let's use this as an example. And sure, elements of the text are accidental or incidental or are not meant to be laden with extra meaning. It's useful to think of everything in a text as being a deliberate decision when you're writing. Bring the text into your sphere of control. Anyway, the curtains are blue. I want you to visualize a room from a horror novel. There can be anything in it, but there must be blue curtains. Visualize it. Now, I want you to add one word to the phrase, the curtains are blue, to indicate that this is a room from a horror novel. Maybe the tattered curtains are blue, or the blood-stained curtains are blue. Now do the same exercise, but make it a room from a steamy romance. The velvet curtains are blue. The point of this exercise is to demonstrate that every word has value. It adds something, it evokes something, so be deliberate. Another exercise is the wooden bed exercise. Take the phrase wooden bed and change one word to create a wooden bed that is more specific. A wooden bunk might be on a ship. An oak bed suggests luxury, while a splintery bed suggests something else. These two exercises dovetail nicely into Brandon Sanderson's ideas on description and the pyramid of abstraction. And quite honestly, I have the faint feeling I may have picked these up from one of his older lectures from several years ago, so check them out. The point is, every word helps evoke a feeling. String these together and you get a consistent, unified feeling. Different literary techniques, especially depending on how they are combined, can further this feeling. And I want to assure you that this is real. Evoking feeling through text is real. It's how propaganda works. It's why some music makes your skin crawl or your hair stand on end, or why movies can make you cry or laugh. Everyone likes to think stories are just stories, that they can't really be affected by them, but we are. There's real magic here, the ability to make feeling from functionally nothing. So what about unity theory for literary analysis? Literary analysis looks like this: a triangle, in some ways larger than the original, overlaid over the top to draw a different conclusion. Your wider base means you're drawing not only from textual evidence from the work, devices, quotes, patterns, but also from additional works, literary theories, or discursive tools. Now, because we can never truly know what the point of a story is or was meant to be, every theoretical point is somewhat hesitant, although it's not argued as such. You could argue that the point you're making is one the author intended to make, or made by accident as a result of contextual factors, or you could admit to performing a deliberate counter-reading in an attempt to bring new ideas to light regarding the text, your theoretical base, your context, or the context in which the author was operating. Analysis is, in itself, a creative act. Unity theory can be a bit tautological, a circular argument about a triangle, if you will. The intention is to get you to think. As a writer, to return often, particularly in the editing stage, to the question of what's my point? What emotion am I trying to convey here in this scene, in the course of the text? For the analyst, the question is, given the discursive tools and evidence I have available to me, what point can I make? Is this a point I believe the author is making by accident because of their context or because of mine? Or am I constructing this point to try and say something else new and interesting? I will leave with this final idea. Contemporary stories in many ways err towards complexity, particularly the psychological complexity of characters, what can be called round characters.